Welcome to Small Talk by Sfarim Chatter. I'm Nachi Weinstein. On this episode of Small Talk, I'm going to be joined by Rabbi Yirmiyahu Cohen, who is a mashgiach in Yeshivat Mikdash Melech and a teacher in a few seminaries, and is the author of the book From the Dorm to the Chuppah, a humorous, user-friendly guide published by Mosaic Press. So thank you, Rabbi Cohen, for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
What can you tell the listeners about this book, From the Dorm to the Chuppah?
I'll tell you. Being a mashgiach in a American yeshiva for teenage boys and teaching in 4 seminaries of teenage girls, I was involved in shidduchim and I was involved in different types of relationships. And I realized that the very many things which boys and girls don't know about, very many things which are obvious when you think about them from the outside, but when it comes to tachlis, to the real world, boys and girls are oblivious of this, and this is a problem that goes through the dating, through the shidduchim, through the marriage, and I decided to write a book which will tackle the problem from the shoresh, from the root, to be able to get the boy and the girl, by the time they get married, to be much more the product they want to be, so that they enjoy a much better marriage, and at the same time, they get along with other people too. So the point of my book, in short, is to get people to recognize themselves, improve themselves, and have the greatest marriage afterwards.
Now, as the subtitle says, you wrote it as a humorous, user-friendly guide.
Because I'm the mashgiach, assistant principal in a yeshiva, so I hear about all the problems of the dorm. Whether the boy takes too much time in the shower, or the windows are opened, or what happens in the SEMs. And because I have heard of so many meetings with so many girls and boys about their shidduchim experiences and my dating advice, that it's full of really funny stories which are all true, and each story has a point behind it, and I show everybody how that point might actually be talking to them. And therefore, when people read the book, it's like, wow, it's so real. It's so honest. The answer is because it's real stories and honest conversations with my students over the last 15 to 20 years. So then life is funny. Life is meaningful.
So you mentioned your experience. You're informed by your experiences as a mashgiach and as teaching in seminary. So you do both. Is this book then for both, or really informed? Well, you said it's informed, but is it informed by both, or it's only specifically for a boy or for a girl?
It's actually for both. This book is for both boys and girls. Baruch Hashem, it's been out for almost a year, and it's sold out in my yeshivas, in the yeshivas in Yerushalayim, in the SEMs which I teach, and other SEMs and other stores, because it's a book which boys and girls, first of all, find super funny, super real, and I talk to them very honestly and directly on what happens to them at the age of 17, 18, etc. So yes, it's applicable to both, and even to young married people too. But usually young married people do not read marriage books unless they have problems.
Now, you just mentioned there 17, 18, 19. So it's from the dorm to the chuppah. So at what stage does the book begin for boys or girls? Where is it beginning, and where, you mentioned the young married couple, so kind of, I guess it ends by marriage.
Right. So the book really is from the moment that the yeshiva bacher or the SEM girl walks into the SEM or the yeshiva, and they start having problems with the chabrusas, with their roommates, with their porch mates, with their teachers, with their classmates, with whoever comes into their life, and they always blame somebody else. My book shows them how most of the cases you have to start by yourself, making sure you're a better person, and once you start recognizing your faults, recognizing your strengths, that's what my book does for them, helps them work on themselves. So then what happens is that they get along better with people around them. Eventually, when they go back home, they get along better with their parents, with their siblings, with their friends, with the places they work. And it gets to the chuppah too. The truth is, it's a book about changing yourself to be a better person for yourself and for others. But because people like hearing the word dating and marriage, so I made it like a dating marriage book, but really, all the examples of dating and marriage, really, it's a book to become a better person in everything that you do.
So there's 5 parts of the book. I want to run through. I'll read the chapter headers briefly, and then I want to turn it to you for examples and talk about the structure of the book and the different 5 parts. So part 1, you have the introduction, teaching, and the shidduch crisis, dating coach, but adam lechavera coach. Part 2, self-awareness, annoying people, the root of the problem, the mentor. Part 3, are you ready to get married? Your likes and strengths, men and women are different, departments, his responsibilities, her responsibilities, then his responsibilities, freedom and children, demo and the dorm. And then you have part 4, prior research. What are you looking for in a spouse? Wants and needs. How important are looks? How to create an efficient resume. Checking out the other side. What to ask. How to behave during the date. The actual date. What to look out for during the date. How to decide objectively. Part 5, what to expect during the engagement period. Emunah and prayer. Stories of chizuk. What are you doing to help people get married? Marriage advice, marriage motivation, marriage tips, crash course for parents, and then you have a few appendices. So, okay, that's a lot, and we're just doing this in small talk. But if you could just, the structure of the book, walk everyone through the steps here.
So, first of all, the introduction talks about myself, how I began teaching in yeshiva, and I would hear everything from the angle of the yeshiva boys and their problems of other people. When I started teaching in SAMS, I would hear all the problems of the yeshiva girls and how they dealt with other people. And then when they started to go out together, boys and girls, because my students became older after they left SAM, for example, after they left yeshiva, and I realized that I really was in a position to be a shadchan. And I tried making shidduchim, hundreds and hundreds of tries, and God said, that's not for you, and it didn't work. And I tried many, many, many tries. Baruch Hashem, after 5 years, I quit being a shadchan. But then I realized, whilst I was trying to be a shadchan, on the side, I was becoming a dating coach without even realizing. I was talking to tens of talmidim and talmidot in the evenings every week. And I realized, wow, why am I being a shadchan when I'm a much better natural dating coach? So then I decided to study all the problems which I hear in shidduchim, and I started seeing what could the problem be, from where it starts, from where it ends, what's the shorish, is the problem a new problem in marriage, or it started much before. I did a lot of research. I gave many classes in Torah Anytime. I got a lot of feedback from the classes. Baruch Hashem, the classes were watched by thousands. And I realized, hey, I have something over here. Let's talk to people honestly what they have to do, what they're expected to do, and don't assume the boys know. For example, I sat down a boy that before a shidduch, and I gave him a whole list of things he has to do, and I thought I prepared him. The next day, the girl calls me, Rabbi. He was a really nice guy, but he was smoke. He asked me in the middle of the date, can he smoke? And I didn't know what to say, so I let him smoke. So, Rabbi, how come you didn't tell him not to smoke? So I called the boy and I said, how come you smoked? He said, I asked her. She said, it's fine. I says, duh. What do you think the girl's going to say? No on the first date? She says, why don't you tell me? I said, you know what? I should have told you. I'm going to write it down on the list. Many, many things boys and girls think is pashut, and it's not pashut. And that's what I did. My book is so fresh and so direct and so honest that there's nothing that you're going to say, oh, had I known. There's no had I known. It's 15 years of experience of all the problems that boys and girls didn't know, which are obvious and pashut. But if nobody tells you, nobody knows. So that's pretty much what I do. So I get the person to recognize themselves, to see their strengths and weaknesses, to see how the problem is not their roommate or their chavrusa or their classmate, but normally themselves. And I show them the shorish of the problem. And if they don't work on it now, it's going to come up again with her parents, with his parents, with the friends, with the employees, with the employers, eventually with your spouse. And you and I both know that once we're married and the spouse complains, then it's very hard for us to change things. It takes a lot of work and it's very hard. I'd rather get the people to work on themselves before, when it's easier, without the pressure. And when they get to marriage, they're much better people. But not only in marriage, Nachi, in everything in life. And I'm doing a new course, a new book called the You Course, where I talk to you as you. Forget about all these side things. And when the person becomes a better person for himself, for God, and for others, then marriage is bliss. Marriage is magical.
So you gave that one example. Do you have any others you want to share? Especially you said you have, the subtitle says, again, it's a humorous, user-friendly class. Any particular funny stories or anything in general, an example that jumps out?
Another funny story of how good or bad a shadchan I was that the very first shidduch I ever made was probably like 15 years ago. And a boy from yeshiva tells me, Rabbi Cohen, you teach in Talmud Devorah. I was only teaching there then. You teach Talmud Devorah. Do you have any girls for me? And a girl from Talmud Devorah asked me, Rabbi, you teach in Mikdash Melech. Do you have any boys for me? So I'm like, let me see. So I look into my Google Sheets and I notice that there's a boy and a girl which are of similar background, I thought, and I set them up. The next morning, I get a phone call from her and from him. It says, Rabbi, we sat there and we looked at each other and we said, what was Rabbi Cohen thinking? Like my background and his background is so different looks, different height, different everything. So I said, you know what? I looked at the Google Sheets. I saw that your birthday and her birthday were the same. So I said, Min HaShamayim, they must be suited for each other. And I tried you out. So obviously that's not a good reason to make shidduchim. And that's one of the many funny stories which I did. And Baruch Hashem, my shidduchim experience was terrible, but I tried. But Baruch Hashem, my students, my students go out in shidduchim and together, and they said when they don't have what to talk about, they break their ice, cracking jokes about my accent and about how I teach and my English accent and my styles, because I'm a very active teacher. So they always find me a topic of conversation for the good and for the bad. So through the experience and through the know-how, and mainly through the experience, not so much the know-how, the experience, and from my Rebbeim and from the books I've read, especially Rabbi Akiva Tatz, he has many books, many shiurim on dating and etc. That I've learned a lot, and I feel that Baruch Hashem, it's one of my strong subjects, if not my strongest subject, relationships, especially between teenagers and eventually young married people.
Who would you say the book is meant for?
Teenagers from the age of 15 till the age of 22, boys and girls. Anybody who speaks English, and it's a very user-friendly. What I mean by user-friendly, my students say it's a Shabbos book because they feel they're like scrolling through a phone, they're scrolling through the social media, which is easy. So I made it in a way that's very, very easy. Not too deep, not too heavy. They can scroll through. I would say the majority of my students have read my book over one Shabbos.
What are you trying to accomplish with this book?
My main thing is to make better marriages, to avoid having to use marriage counselors on things which are super obvious. My main thing is, let's start before that. My main accomplishment is that a person recognizes themselves, improves themselves, has a better relationship with people around them, and eventually their marriage is going to be much better. There'll be problems because there's always problems in marriage, but they'll have the tools to be able to take care of the problems themselves or with light help from others. As opposed to they get married, they don't even realize there's a problem, and then they need so much more help to get out of the problems. One of my students said, Rabbi, it's, I'd rather pay X amount of money for your book than the money on counseling.
Okay, so I'll link to the book in the show notes. You can purchase the book in Sfarim stores, Amazon, Mosaica, and if you purchase through Mosaica, as always, you can use code CHATTER, CHATTER, for 15% off. Thank you, Rabbi Cohen, for joining me.
Thank you, Nachi. It's been a pleasure.